Has the United States ever atoned for slavery? What has the United States materially done to course correct after hundreds of years of slavery and decades of Jim Crow segregation? It's a very popular thing to scoff at the idea of reparations or any sort of corrective action around this issue in this day and age. After all, none of us have ever been enslaved. We can all sit where we want on public transportation and drink from the same water fountain as anyone. But when you compare how the U.S. treated African Americans after hundreds of years of black enslavement with the way that victims of the Holocaust were treated after World War II, or the internment of Japanese Americans in the U.S., or even Native Americans, you start to notice some glaring inequities. I'm Dara Star Tucker, and this is The Breakdown. 6 million Jewish people were violently slaughtered during the Holocaust in Germany. It was one of the most brutal genocides that the world has ever known. But have you ever wondered what happened when all of that came to an end? Did everyone just go back to business as usual? Well, the issue of restitution or reparations for Jewish people has been hammered out over the many decades since the end of World War II. In the initial aftermath, no one really wanted to talk about it. But after a Jewish state was established 3 years after the end of World War II in 1948 with the support of the United Nations, suddenly Jewish people were in a position to have their demands taken more seriously. In 1951, a conference on Jewish material claims against Germany was opened in New York City by Nahum Goldman to help survivors with claims against Germany. The German government agreed to pay out $845 million to Holocaust survivors and their descendants over a period of 14 years. In 1988, over 40 years after the end of World War II, the German government paid out another $125 million in reparations to Holocaust survivors and their descendants. In 1999, German companies like Deutsche Bank, Siemens, and BMW were sued by Jewish organizations for their involvement in the Holocaust. The German government paid $5 billion on their behalf to avoid these lawsuits. In 2012, Germany paid another $772 million in reparations directly to Israel. In 2014, the SNCF, a French state-owned railway company, was forced to pay $60 million to American Jewish Holocaust survivors for transporting deportees to Germany during the Holocaust, even though they were forced to participate in these transports by the German government and didn't actually make any profits from them at all. That's another $100,000 per survivor. By 1978, the Conference on Jewish Material Claims against Germany had paid out about 53 billion Deutsche Marks to Holocaust survivors and their descendants. All in all, that organization holds $900 million in assets and has $1.7 billion in various accounts. They continue to pay reparation claims to this day. But the restitution for that awful chapter in history hasn't only been financial. The